Hi guys, welcome to our next lesson, and we are going to be looking at the different types of plants that we have, and we're going to start by studying today non-vascular plants. We're going to cover two sections, non-vascular plants and vascular seedless plants. So before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys some questions to review from last time. Please go ahead and pause the video when you look at these questions so that you can answer them, write down, answer them, and then check your answers. Okay, and when we started this unit, we looked at this picture and we talked about how green algae was the ancestor of non-vascular of all plants, being a protist. And we saw that plants become non-vascular, vascular non-seed, vascular seed, and vascular flowering. So now we're going to look at each of these individually. And what I would like you to do, you're going to be seeing this cladogram a lot, and I would like you to know how to draw it on your notebook. So if you could please draw it on your notes and have it in your notes and make sure that you know the order in which everything goes. So you notice that in this cladogram, it explains that green algae here is the ancestor of all plants. And remember that this means that evolution occurred here. And these nodules talk about how basically anything past this nodule means that these organisms have that trait, right? So like every one of these organisms have embryo protection, and then everything here has vascular tissue, everything except the green algae and the non-vascular plants. So pause this video to draw this. But today we're going to be looking at non-vascular plants. So non-vascular plants are also known as bryophytes. Bryophytes include mosses, hornworts, and liverworts. Now, here's a picture of a liverwort. It's called a liverwort because of the shape. It looks like a liver. And here's a hornwort, which, you can see like the pointy scales, kind of like a horn. These are more uncommon. Probably the one that you're most familiarized with is what the mosses. So mosses are very interesting. You can see them probably growing in many places in your house. They need moisture, high moisture content. All of these do, all bryophytes. And they don't actually have true roots, leaves, and stems. They're very, very ancient to have those qualities. But these little things that you see, how mosses attach, those are called rhizoids. Now, rhizoids are not considered true roots because their job is not to act as a root system where it absorbs nutrients. The job of the rhizoid is to actually anchor or hold a plant in place. So as you notice here, these rhizoids are wrapping around the tree trunk because it's going to hold on, it's going to help this moss anchor here. Now, these rhizoids will, because they don't absorb water or any nutrients, they need to be in a high moisture environment. So in Florida, we have high moisture. We see these, but maybe not as much as if you were to travel to Washington State or another place like that. Okay, as we said, they don't have a vascular tissue, and so how do they move their materials around? Through osmosis and diffusion. Remember that osmosis and diffusion is when the particle movements from high to low concentration. So where there's high water in the environment, high moisture, and there's low moisture here, then the water is going to move in. So that is osmosis. And so another thing, because they lack vascular tissue, they're going to be very small. So you never see a moss probably more than a couple of inches tall. Notice here, these cubes are here to demonstrate that if you think about how osmosis and diffusion and the transmission of particles, it is a lot easier to distribute moisture here in something that is this small. And if it's larger, it's going to take a lot longer to get the nutrients to other places. So that's why they can only really be small in size. Now, their their reproductive system is also basic. And notice a couple of things before I get started. Here it says that is the blue isn't haploid and the tan is diploid. And notice this is the tan, this step. So this means that this non-vascular plants spend most of their lives as haploids. So what does that mean? That they spend most of their lives as gametophytes. So it is important for you to know this, because in your task for the team project, you're going to be photographing gametophytes. So you want to pick a gametophyte that's a plant that spends most of its life to being a gametophyte. So a moss would be a great thing to photograph. Now, notice that we're going to start here with the spores. So you have these spores that then fall into the ground if the conditions are good, and they will then begin to develop and grow. As they develop and grow, they will have two different types of leaves. Now, some mosses have both types of leaves, female and male spores. Some mosses may only be female and some mosses may only be male. So notice that you do need to know the name of these leaves. So you have the archegonium, which is the female leaf, and notice the shape of it is like longer and narrower. And then you have the antheridium, which is the male. So the antheridium is where the actual sperm is produced, and there's actual sperm with a flagella that will then, with moisture, travel or get moved. So this needs water for this sperm to be moved into where the egg is, the archegonium. So the sperm is going to enter the archegonium, like here, and fertilize the archegonium, and then you're going to end up with a plant that has a long, narrow, skinny, I guess, antenna, and in the little top round container, that's where the spores will begin to divide through the process of meiosis. Now, once the conditions are right, this sporophyte is gonna then release the spores, and the process is gonna start over. But notice that these egg and sperm, the archegonium and the arthridium, can stay like this for a long time and not reproduce if there isn't water that carries the sperm over to the archegonium. So the big takeaways from this is that non-vascular plants need a lot of moisture and water to carry the sperm for fertilization, and that they live mostly in the gametophyte stage. We're going to watch a short video about this.
If you and I had been around 400 million years ago, we wouldn't have seen any flowering plants, just mosses and liverworts. Their ancient evolutionary origins are reflected in their unusual biology. Here's the odd thing about mosses. the leafy green part that makes up the bulk of the plant, it has only half of its chromosomes, sort of like an unfertilized egg. In fact, the only part of a moss that has the full complement of genetic material is a skinny stalk called a sporophyte. And here's another peculiarity of mosses. Instead of making pollen like other plants, they produce sperm like animals. After a rain shower or heavy dew, sperm swim to another moss plant to fertilize its egg. Then a sporophyte, with a full set of chromosomes, grows on top of the second moss plant. As the sporophyte develops, it makes a bulbous capsule at its tip, filled with tiny spores, which again have only half their chromosomes. That is the most beautiful shade of green, and those are the spores. When conditions are right, the spores are released and carried away by the wind. If a spore lands in a site with enough light, moisture, and space, it will germinate and grow into a new moss plant. Mosses on exposed tree trunks tend to produce short sporophytes, which stick out far enough to disperse their spores. But mosses like this haircap, which live on the ground where there's less air movement, need tall sporophytes to catch the wind. When my grandmother was a little...
So just to wrap this up, here is the rhizoid. That is a root-like system, and then you have the leaves, which are the gametophyte. And remember, these leaf-like structures can either be female or male depending on the shape. When the egg and the sperm gets moved by water into the egg and fertilizes the egg, it's going to grow a stalk with a capsule. This is considered the sporophyte, where the spores are held, that then will be released into the environment based on the conditions of the air.